And I think the thing that holds a lot of people back from taking risks that may end up giving you a massive upside is the chance that it doesn't work out and you have to like take a couple steps back and you're not like flexing on Instagram the way you were 6 months before.
Creative people, what's going on? Welcome back to yet another episode of the Creatives Are Essential podcast. My name is Christina. To my left, I have
Mark Lee.
All right,
What's
welcome back.
People? Welcome. I'm happy to be back.
With the radio voice. Okay. And to the right, we got
a person who's very tired, but here and ready to go. My name is Joe. Walk on, friends.
I understand exactly how you feel right now. This is consistency, even when you don't feel like it.
Real talk.
We're on episode 9?
Yeah. Is it 9?
8, 9. I'm losing count, which is a good thing. We're just staying consistent. And then, of course, today we are joined by yet another special guest. We're just getting everybody in here lately. We have Tyler Babin with us. What's going on, Tyler?
Not much. I'm excited to be here.
I'm glad to have you. You were actually the first person to respond when we were reaching out to different guests. So you were the first person that we locked in. I was like, okay, we can get Tyler. We can get everybody.
There was this quote I heard not too long ago that was like, the most successful people always answer their email the fastest. It's this like mindset I've tried to adopt lately of like,
I love it.
I'd never let anything sit in the box for longer than like 12 hours.
I love it.
Awesome.
I wish I was more like you. I have to adopt that.
I just want to say, I'm excited to be here and be talking to you, man, because I've been following your journey from like the very beginning. Like when I first started my YouTube channel, I was like, man, let me just look for some people to inspire me. And I've seen you since you left, VaynerMedia to like moving to New York to moving out into New York and, the Adobe Residency. Like you've been moving, man. And I just want to say, good job, man. You're definitely inspiring us out here. So.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that. It's one of those things that I think, and I'm sure you guys know, like when you just have your head down and you're focused, like sometimes you don't even consciously understand like everything that's happening. And so it's like not until you hear an outsider's perspective of like, oh yeah, like all these things have happened. It's really like that stuff really resonates with me. So I appreciate it.
No problem, man.
Absolutely, man.
Thank you for everything you're doing and you're contributing to the community. So we definitely appreciate you.
Yeah.
Tyler, how old are you? If you don't mind me asking.
27.
Wow.
Killing the game.
You look like you had to think about it for a second. You were like,
I forgot.
Are you like, yeah, I do the same. I do the same thing. People ask me, I'm like, God, how old am I? You got to do the math. It's like, wait, what month was I born in?
That's funny.
I don't know. I feel like I recently like made the mental shift that I'm just 30 in my mind now.
Yes.
Like I'm close enough that I might as well just like be 30.
Right.
And so sometimes I really do forget if I'm like where I'm at in that spectrum. But yeah, 27. I'll be 28 this summer.
Completely understand. I just turned 28, but in my mind, I've been like 30 for the past year or two.
Yeah, we call her Grandma. Actually, that's her nickname.
Grandma.
Anyway, moving forward. Tyler, for those who don't know you, we follow your work, but tell people who don't know about you at home listening a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So my name's Tyler Babin, originally sort of born and raised in North Florida. Was able to bounce around the country a little bit, lived in New York for a while. I'm now on the West Coast. I have a really hard time pinpointing like what to call myself because my sort of creative career has really just had ups and downs. I've done everything from design to photography to filmmaking. So I usually just refer to myself as a creator or creative. But I started my sort of life, picked up a camera at a really, really young age and just never put it down. And it's been my life's mission and journey to figure out a way to wake up every day and like make a living with that camera in one way or another that makes me feel like I don't have a job or that I don't have to like get up and go to the office or anything. Right. And so that's been the journey up to this point, is just figure out how to make a life around creativity. And so far it's been going well.
Well, you said a lot just then. You said you from Florida to, from Florida to New York to, I think you're in Portland now, right?
Yeah.
Like kind of detail that journey for us.
Yeah. Yeah. So born and raised in Tallahassee, and was always just into like photographing my friends, like skateboarding and stuff around my neighborhood when I was really young. And then when I got into high school, I got into magic, and there's like this weird subgenre of magic called cardistry. It's basically like juggling with playing cards. It's like fancy shuffling. And I was always like really into the visuals of that. That's like what got me interested in putting content out on YouTube. So I would make these montages of me shuffling cards in like crazy ways. And I would do like these fancy edits and post those on YouTube. And then at some point I realized I was way more into the process of filming and editing those videos than just like the magic tricks I was doing for fun. Right. And so everything kind of just stacked and progressed along from there. And I knew, like, as you guys know, anyone who doesn't know Tallahassee, it's a very like weird middle of nowhere town. There's not a lot you can do there, really. There's not a lot of growth. And so I knew that I had to escape that. And so when I was 21, I had just dropped out of college and was trying to like figure out what to do with my life. So I started applying to every creative internship I could find in New York. And, not having a degree or like anything to really show for myself up to that point, I didn't get a single call back except for one. And that was a VaynerMedia, which at the time was crazy. Sort of the new creative agency kid on the block in New York. They offered me a 2-month internship as a graphic designer, packed up everything, fit my bag into my life into a backpack and a suitcase, like no place to live, just figured it out on the fly. Wow. Bought a one-way flight to New York. And then that 2-month internship turned into a 3.5-year job as a creative director with Gary Vee. And that was, we could dissect that forever. That was a whole like really intense run. And then in the summer of 2019, decided to leave that job. And I took on a creative residency with Adobe, which was sort of, Adobe basically said they wanted to fund my creative projects in my life for a year so that I could sort of like stretch my wings and just figure out what the next chapter was. So we did that.
How do I sign up for that?
I know, right? Yeah. We can definitely break that down. And then life obviously took a weird turn in 2020. The world got kind of crazy. And that creative residency ended in May of 2020 while I was living in Manhattan. So it was kind of the peak of COVID and everything. All of a sudden didn't have a job or really any way to make money. And so since then, it's been, building out my own agency and my own brand and podcasts and YouTube and everything in between that I can to ultimately stick with that same mission, which is to wake up every day and be able to like live my life on my own terms and make a living as a creative kid.
Wow. That's dope.
That's amazing. Like there's a lot in that. I'm going to say
right.
First it's like, I don't even know what to pinpoint.
Podcast is done.
Right. But if I'm going to be honest with you, the one, like the thing that stuck out the most to me was the magic. How in the world, what got you to like, what's your best close-up magic like move you can do? What is it?
I mean, like, I don't know. I still mess with cards a lot. I like collect cards now as like a hobby because it's the one thing that's always stayed consistent in my life. So I do think I've got a pretty deadly, like ambitious card routine that I can do with like a deck of cards. But it's definitely not something that I like perform anymore. It's not something that I'm like, as technically proficient as what I would like, but it's sort of my nervous habit. Like it's weird for me not to, I made a deal with myself. I wasn't allowed to shuffle cards on podcasts anymore because you just hear it in the background the whole time. But normally like there's a deck of cards next to my laptop at all times. And like whether I'm on a phone call or, letting footage render or whatever it may be, I'm sitting there and I'm just shuffling cards like all day long.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Joe's not gonna do that in podcast.
Great sound effects.
Hey, the next episode, you're just gonna see me with just a deck of cards here, and just
not Uno cards. No Uno cards.
Uno cards, right?
No, that's awesome, man. But like, I the second thing that definitely stood out was this Adobe residency.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. I'll give you the pitch. So about, I want to say almost 6 years ago now, Adobe started this project called the Creative Residency. And it was Adobe's sort of the mission behind it was to develop a better relationship with the community and creators that are using all of the Adobe software. And it gave Adobe access to people and creators who are working in this new digital age. And it was really a good like give and take of like Adobe was funding creators while creators were using the tools and helping Adobe develop software for the future. And so every year, Adobe picks a handful of creatives and gives them essentially a full ride job for 1 year. In exchange, you just have to create as much as you can for that year. And so the first handful of years, they were just doing like 2 or 3 different creators. I think the year that I was selected, there were 7 of us all over the world. So I was in New York. There was a few other people in the States, but then we had people in Japan and Australia and all over the world who were just doing their thing. A lot of times it was like photographers and illustrators, and I was the only videographer. There's only been one other video creative resident throughout the program, and that was Sarah Dici, who she's like a tech YouTuber based in New York. But yeah, the program's really incredible. It's changed a lot recently. So now they still are funding creators for a year, but now they're doing it more on a project basis. So you can just go to Adobe's Creative Residency website and pitch a project to Adobe, and then you can get funded everywhere from like $500 to $5,000 up to a full year ride as a creator. Yeah, it's kind of like an internship meets not an internship at all, because you really are sort of on your own. Which was actually really difficult. Like it's funny. I remember the couple months leading up to leaving Vayner and knowing I was going to transition to the residency. I was really, really excited. Obviously, I was like, great. I don't have to check in with anyone. I just get to go crazy and like make stuff all day long. And then it was a really important lesson that I had to learn around structure and like things like that in my life, because day one, all of a sudden I didn't have anyone telling me what to make anymore. It was the first time where everything I was making were my own ideas and my own thoughts. And I remember like the first couple months of the residency, I was super paralyzed. I had a really hard time making stuff and like getting momentum built, because whenever you have the ability to do anything, sometimes that's a really overwhelming amount of decisions, and you can kind of get frozen in them.
Right. I want to say, if there's any 3 things I can associate to you, is 1, you always have a Red Bull. And then you always have your camera, of course, but then you always have this notepad. And just saying that to say, like, you're a deep dude. And one thing I was sharing with Tina and Joe earlier is like, there's other creators that you can play their videos on YouTube, but then there's certain creators where you have to be intentional about like sitting down and taking in what they have to say. And you're one of those people. So I'll be driving and I get a notification, oh, Tyler Babin just posted a video. And I'm like, cause I know I have to set that time aside to just sit and like take in what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I just want to ask you, like, what's been that thing that's been driving you to just have the courage to just jump and move into different opportunities and just take up different, like, You're a very risk-taking guy, I can say.
Yeah. You moved to New York at 21.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
With nowhere to live.
That's crazy.
That's in retrospect a little crazy. I don't know. I mean, it's funny. Like that's something that gets brought up a lot, is people will be like, why are you not scared of like taking risks and making jumps and everything like that? I don't know where it comes from, really. Like I don't, because my family definitely is not that way at all. They're like very like take the safe route always. But to me, I just didn't feel like there were many things I could do that weren't fixable, especially like when you're young. Yeah. So in my mind, it was like, what's the worst case scenario thing that happens if I move to New York and it doesn't work out? I would just move home. That would sting. Like, obviously, like I wouldn't want to do that. That would be like, I'm sure that would come with embarrassment and things like that. But that's like the worst case scenario thing that would happen, is I would just have to pack up and buy a flight home. Whenever I left Vayner to do the residency with only, a 1-year contract, it was like, what happens if I don't have a way to make money at the end of that? All right, well, I'll just go get another job in advertising. Like, I always feel like, I'm not scared at all about taking a step backwards. Like, I think it's fine, because sure, that will come with thoughts and things from other people, but I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think the thing that holds a lot of people back from taking risks that may end up giving you a massive upside is the chance that it doesn't work out and you have to like take a couple steps back and you're not like flexing on Instagram the way you were 6 months before. You know, like it really is. I think that affects a lot of people. And I don't know why, like I was able to like really dissect that in my life, but not being scared of taking a step backwards, I think in turn has actually allowed me to make massive leaps forward and like skip over a lot of steps that historically I would have had to go through in the early stages of my career.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite videos that you've ever posted was you had like an hour notice to jump on this plane and go over to Montauk. And I was like, man, I don't even know where Montauk is, but I want to go, you know? And to me, I think that was so dope because it was just such a different perspective. Like we all come from structure in a sense to where, you know, like, hey, if I want to go to this place, like I'm going to go online, I'm going to schedule some time aside and book my flight and it's scheduled out. But you just had this like courage, like, hey, you know, I have a couple of things I want to do while I'm there. The opportunity arose, let's just do it. And there's not a lot of people. That's a very, distinct way of thinking to be able to do something like that. Because I'm sure if you ask 10 of your friends, maybe 8 out of the 10 will say, yeah, I'm not doing that, dude. You know, like you're crazy or, you know, so.
But I love stuff like that.
I love stuff like that. And that's one of those things that like just inspires me. Like I was telling Christina about an idea like, hey, I want to do something. I want to just like go to New York just to have dinner and come back the same day because like of that video, it's just like it gives you like just the different perspective. Like, why not? Like, why can't I do that? Is it conventional? No, but it's doable and it's pretty cool, you know? So man, I can just.
Yeah. And I think also like not thinking about it too much, like as an example for that day, is like a piece of context to anyone who hasn't seen the video. I got a call one morning from this company in New York that does like private jet charters. And they were like, we have this plane that has to fly out to Montauk, which is basically the farthest point east in all of New York. It's like this little island off the coast. And they were like, we have a seat. Do you want it? And they were like, you have to be at the airport in 20 minutes. And I was like, cool. And I just like grabbed a bag and ran out the door.
Right.
And I remember I landed there and it like there's nothing there. Like it's just, there's one like landing strip for a very tiny plane and that was it. And I remember getting off and I was like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life. What am I going to do here? I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get home. I don't have a car here. Like this was a weird idea. And then once you get over that like initial fear of like, all right, what am I to do? This is weird. This doesn't make sense. Did I just waste an entire day flying out here for nothing? I just kind of figured out, all right, well, what's step one? I need somewhere to sleep tonight. Let's go find a hotel. Right. And then, all right, next, this hotel is right by the beach. Let's go look at the water and just think about things. And like each of those decisions, just going from A to B, B to C, C to D is like an element of a story to tell. Right. And like, I can break each little step of that down. And whenever you break it down simple like that, it's easier to like build that momentum back up versus if I was like, oh my God, I don't know how I'm getting home. I don't know how I'm sleeping. And I'm like trying to figure out the entire day. You know, the second I stepped off the plane, I probably would have like gotten paralyzed in that fear a little bit. So just breaking things down into like the tiniest little increments and like address that problem and then address that problem and then address that problem makes it a lot easier to live that more like spontaneous life.
That's a very interesting way to look at it. Like I never really thought about that, like, or more so like how that can play out in real life. Cause I always had this like thought, like, you remember, I mean, I don't know if they really do it the same way anymore, but like back when you like in the day when you used to like download an album from the iTunes store to your phone, it'll start downloading like 3 or 4 songs at a time or something like that. But if you set it to like just download one at a time, it would go faster because like all 3 are going at the same time. They take so long to get finished.
Come on, metaphor king.
And so for real, so like now you're saying this like, okay, just taking one issue at a time. Let's knock one off the list. And now because of that, you found your way into a position that's beneficial. And my mind's kind of blown right now how you can really take a really bad situation and still make it work, or a situation that you have no idea how to, there's no roadmap.
It's uncertain.
For it. Exactly. Okay. So what's the first thing I can handle in this?
Right.
Let's just focus on that. And then, okay, now that's done. What's the next thing? That whole like, you know, how do you eat an elephant? You know, one bite at a time. But that's awesome, man. I'd never even seen that play out like in a real life situation like that. It's dope.
But I like the way you think though, because even on your Instagram profile, you know, it says that you focus on personal growth and process. You know, so like not just thinking of the end result, but like really enjoying the process in the middle. Like one video. I mean, this kind of maybe a little off, but one video that I saw from you, it may have been the first video that I saw from you, was you taking a picture of like some Nikes, like doing like a whole shoot with that. And just, you know, I believe it was about trying to get your dream clients. And it's just like, you know, how do I get my dream client? I have to have the photos or the work to show them, you know, so how do you know, I guess build out that ideal work that you would want to show for them, and just you know, practicing, like putting in the work into the process, so that when the time is ready for you to do this thing, you already know what you want to do.
Yeah, I'm so happy you said the word practice, because there's something about the creative world, and especially in like photographers and videographers, that practice is not part of the equation in like the early stages for some reason. And it's always been so bizarre to me that when I see someone who's like never had any interest in photo or video go buy a camera and then be like, all right, I'm available for shoots. Like, hang on now.
Wait.
Like that, I mean, that's literally the equivalent of me going and like buying a basketball tomorrow and being like, all right, cool, I'm ready for the NBA. Like, no, that's just not how this works. And so, like taking time and like learning your craft the same way that someone who is a painter or an illustrator would like spend hours in a sketchbook. It's all the same thing. And like in those practicing hours, that's whenever you can figure out who you want to work for. And so, like in that example, and this is something like I've done throughout my entire career. If there's someone I want to work for, like I never wait for the phone to just ring and that brand to call me or that client to call me. I will go like buy the product and I will generate content and then send that to them and be like, hey, this is what I'm capable of doing. If you want to work together at some point, awesome. But otherwise, like here's something for free that provides value to you. And
that's good.
I just sort of hope that it opens up doors in the future. And I think like doing things like that, if the idea of doing a free project and then sending it to your dream client is not like attractive for you, I don't think you actually love what you're doing that much. Because to me, that sounds like an awesome way to spend the day. Like if I'm going to go shoot a product for Apple and I'm going to like take Apple products and go make a campaign and then send it to them, that sounds like a blast to me. If it doesn't sound like fun for you to do that for your dream client, then maybe that client isn't actually a dream client.
You may not want to do it.
This might not be the word for you.
Practice. We're talking about practice. Practice. Yeah, man. So I just touching back on something I mentioned earlier in terms of you always having a journal. How do you think like journaling has contributed to your success?
I was going to say, I saw you writing in it before we got started.
And that's such that's something I admire, because I don't know how many journals I've bought from Target. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to start journaling. And then 2 months later, I'm like, where's that journal? You know,
and then you buy another one.
And you buy another one.
And then you just have like an abundance of journals.
And you're like, this one's a leatherback.
I definitely have. Like, I don't want to tell you that I'm better than what I am. I do like a third of every notebook, and then I buy another one.
Move on to the next one.
For me, basically the thing I try to do is not keep anything in my head that doesn't have to be there and like put it somewhere physical. Because I'm often, juggling like 5, 10, 15 different like projects or ideas at a time. And if I try and keep all of that organized and cataloged in my head, it's just not going to work. And so like the page I'm writing in right now, I just wrote the word digest and then 314. To like digest and then the date. And I'm basically just trying to get everything that's going on in my head right now onto one piece of paper that I can reference back to and then organize at a later date. So that's really like where notebooks and journals like are important to me is, like one page is everything on the to-do list. And like I'm in LA right now, but I have to start heading back home to Portland next week. So I have like a shot list that I'm building out of all the places I want to photograph on the drive from here to Portland. And so it's like that way, everything that I'm thinking about and that I want to accomplish lives somewhere physical so that I can always like reference back to it. Because otherwise it's easy. You get busy, you get caught up, like you get anxious on like one thing. You're like, let's just move on and like forget about it. And I don't want to forget anything. I always want like things to look back on. And it's nostalgia. Like it'll be cool to look back at this notebook in a year and be like, this is what I was working on.
Yeah. It's interesting that you prefer writing over just like jotting down notes in your phone.
Yeah. There's something about the physical, like actually taking the time to write it, I don't know, maybe that's the whole, like I'm turning 30 thing, but there's something about like that, like 27. Old school, just like something like writing it, that's important to me.
Yeah, well, it's not for me. I had the worst handwriting ever. I'm just gonna. I hate looking at my own writing.
I didn't want to agree with you so soon.
Yeah. She's like, yes.
I'm glad you're acknowledging it.
Man,
well, it's like, wow, your son he writes so well. It's like, no, that's me. And also, I don't have kids.
That's hilarious. Well, I did want to ask you. We have this segment that we call Creative Confessions. And the first thing that I wanted to ask you in that was, what's one thing that you struggle with the most as a creative?
No question. It is standing in my own way. And I think this comes from just like, I think everyone has their fears and insecurities, and there's always this idea of like being afraid of success. So I think that I will subconsciously like sabotage projects that I'm working on. So that way, when it fails, at least I'm like, I was the reason it failed.
That's interesting.
It's not that I just put something out and like the internet didn't like it. So it's like, if the internet doesn't like it, it's like, oh yeah, it's because I messed up this one part. And that is something that, I wish I had an answer of like how to get past it, but it's something I struggle with all the time. So it's sort of, for me, just like having a lot of conversations with myself and trying to get more confident in my own work and just continue to produce more work so that hopefully I get over that like fear one day. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing I struggle with creatively.
When would you say is the last time that happened?
Literally every single project I work on. I mean, it's something that for me it's always like I just don't have a good relationship with like the evil voice in my head that tells me like I'm not good enough for certain things, like I let that voice get way too loud. And so like that's where the practice and like making things for the love of making them is like so important for me, because those are the moments where I feel like I create the best work, and that's the work that like opens up other doors.
Yeah.
But if like a huge brand comes in and like asks me to direct a project or shoot for a project, I'll always be like no way I'm ready for this, or no way that this is actually happening. And that's something that like I think we all creatives deal with some level of like imposter syndrome and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But that's my biggest struggle, and that's the thing that I spend the most time trying to like dissect and work past, like mentally.
Yeah. I'm going to say this. If you haven't watched his video about imposter syndrome, you should probably check that out.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen it. I got to check it out.
Yeah. And that's like, there's like one thing I say in that video that about like making your own highlight reel. Like it's like, I'm sure if you sit down and you write out all your accomplishments, or even if you just think to them, you're like 6 years ago, 5 years ago, and then go through month by month of like everything you accomplished and you did, I'm like, oh, I'm killing it. Like, why am I so concerned? You know? But whenever you're just like in that grind of working through things and directing things, it's easy to kind of get lost and lose track of yourself and your work and your worth with what you're doing.
Yep.
I think one of my favorite moments from you, sorry in advance, you went out to that airplane that was like in the middle of nowhere. And
I remember that one.
It was a simple moment, but it was just so funny to me when you slipped on the black tar. It was just the way you framed it and edited it. I was just cracking up, and I'm like, man, this is so like funny. But talk about that experience, because that was just wild. Like that's another thing that I'm like, man, who would think to put an airplane in the middle of a forest and live out of it? So like, how was that experience for you?
Yeah. So that was crazy. It started out, I had a video that I was like contractually obligated to get out. I had like a sponsored segment that had to go the next day. And so I woke up that morning, I didn't have like any ideas of what I was going to do. And so normally when that happens, I'm like scrolling through Pinterest or just like different image websites, trying to like get inspiration flowing. And I found this photo of an airplane in like the middle of the forest. And I thought it was Photoshopped originally. I was like, oh, that's crazy. And then I clicked on it to find out that not only was it real, like there was a real airplane in the middle of the woods, but it was only like an hour from my house in Portland. And so I was all right, this is the video for today. So I packed up like camera bags, jumped in the car and drove an hour out into the middle of nowhere to find a Boeing 727. So like a massive real airplane that was just stuck in the woods in the middle of nowhere up in Oregon. And so there's this guy, Bruce, who about 20 years ago decided he wanted to live out of an airplane and bought an airplane, bought some land in Oregon, and just dropped the plane there. And it was really, really incredible. So I went and I shot and I did the like sponsored piece that I needed to do. But then I just interviewed the guy who lived there. I like went and knocked on the door and asked him if I could ask him questions. And he said yes. And he gave me the very like technical breakdown of how he got the plane there and why he bought a plane and his idea of why living in a plane was better than living in a regular house. But the thing that to me was just so mind blowing was how much he didn't recognize the feat he had done. Because not only is like the plane in the woods, but it's up this massive hill. Like nothing about it makes sense as to why a plane should be there. And I kept asking him, I was like, do you consider yourself really ambitious? Like, do you feel like you've done something that's really out of the world by doing this? And he was just like, no, like, this is just what I wanted to do. Like, he really just followed his passion of, he had an idea that he wanted to live in a plane and just like step by step, like that si process, figured out how to make that a reality. And so it kind of to circle everything back, like the idea that if I ask anyone right now, like, all right, get a plane, build a house out of it in the middle of the woods, you're not going to know where to start. But this man was like, all right, how do we get a plane? Cool. We got a plane. How do we get the plane to where we need it? All right, cool. We got that. How do we design the inside to live out of? All right, we figured that out. And it's just like step by step, you figure it out. And then all of a sudden you've accomplished this massive, massive feat of like engineering and life. And he was just like the happiest dude who hasn't left in like a year. He just like lives out of a plane. It's really, really bizarre.
So he's still living in this plane? Like you knocked on the plane door? Yeah. There's a door in the back and I went and knocked on it. And I've been out there a couple times since, like anytime ever since I put that video out, anytime I have like friends or family that visit, they all want to go see the plane. And so I'm always taking them back out there. And the most recent time was just about 2 weeks ago. My girlfriend's cousin was in town. And so we went out there and I found out that he hadn't left the plane in a year. He just has people like he like DoorDashes his groceries and he just stays out there like all the time. It's to a plane
very bizarre.
in the woods.
Like I can't find the address. So it's like it's just the plane. You know?
Like okay.
2 takeaways: people are amazing.
Yeah.
And secondly, people are random as crap. Like, well, who does that?
But even going with that, I want to pose the same question that you asked Bruce. Is like, do you understand the feat of what you're doing? Because in my mind, watching that video, I'm like, oh man, he has some connections. Like who has, people that they know that has a plane in the middle of nowhere, but just to hear you say like, you had nothing to do that day and you just went on Pinterest and found it. Right. And out of that, number one, you created a new relationship. You created an experience for us as the viewers. And you just opened up yourself to new possibilities. And that's just one of the things, I can't say it enough, that I just respect about you so much is like just your ability to think outside the box.
Yeah.
And just get like awesome content and just put yourself in positions to continue winning and inspiring us and inspiring other viewers. Like, man, I firmly believe in giving people their flowers. And I just want to, give you your flowers, like, and just say, man, you're amazing dude. So
thanks, man. I think it comes from always just acting like on the moment and like leaning into whatever opportunity sort of presents itself at any given time. So if I would have seen that photo of the plane and been like, all right, cool, I'll go there in a couple of weeks. Like one, I may have not gone. It probably wouldn't have been like as authentic in the moment. So just trying to like act on intuition in the active moment that we're in, and not try and like plan and control anything too much, is where I think the best stories get told.
That's good. So we're just gonna slide right back into these creative confessions real quick. Question for you: how do you deal with creative block?
So it's changed a lot. So this definitely comes from a place of like having a good foundation built and things like that. Right now, if I have creative block, I do my best to just not do anything, to like not try and force through that block and just give myself time to like rest. Is what I did at the beginning of this year. Like I just put out a video a couple weeks ago called Back to the Mission, which was sort of me acknowledging that I hadn't really created anything through like January and February of this year, because the end of 2020, I was stretched so thin that, you know, I remember like first week of January, I was like, I've got nothing left in the tank. Like I can't think of a good idea. Can't think of a good video. And so I gave myself 2 full months, which was the longest I had ever gone, of like not creating. I was still like directing a few projects on the side, but it was like the bare minimum I needed to give it, and just try to give my brain time to like recoup from that. So that's like the number one thing, is give yourself time if you need time, and if you can afford to give yourself time. The other thing is, I think I've recently come to grips with the idea that not everything has to be so original from like beginning to end. There's a lot of quotes about like the best artists are really just like the best thieves of like, how can you take an idea and adapt it and make it work for you? Yeah. And that's something that I've recently been like connecting with more, is if I don't have an idea, but I have to make something, I will try and like consume a bunch of different art and content and take little bits and pieces of it and like reframe it into something new at the end of it. Yeah. There was this quote of like, I forget who said it. I had it saved on a computer and then I lost it at some point, but it's not about what you take from art, but what about what you give back to it. And so you can like take something, add your own twist and your own spin, make it original out of something new. Like when you add your flavor, and then that's you giving something back to art instead of just taking from it. And so I think that if you're okay with that, and you get better at like borrowing ideas and rechanging them and then spitting out something new on the other end, it's easier to sort of get past that creative block, because you realize that nothing you're going to make is going to be probably groundbreaking or original, like it's never been done in some way before. So just take those pieces, add your character to it, and then you have something new on the other side.
Yeah, there's a whole book about that, Steal Like an Artist.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Forget the guy who wrote it, but that's a book that everybody should check out.
It's Austin Kleon.
That's him. But real quick, the first part of what you said, I just had a quick question about that. You said, you take time in between projects when you're going through creative block. Do you ever feel pressure, in between those projects to put something out there?
Yeah, every single time. I mean, I remember like the 2-month break that I took, like every day I was like, all right, it's been a while. Like people haven't heard from me. Do I need to put something out? Right. There's no question, like content is the key to success in a lot of ways. The more stuff you can put out into the world, oftentimes the better, because it's just going to get more eyeballs, and there's so much like white noise and stuff like that. But I usually attach it to, I've tried to like take a lot more from like music and from actors and stuff like that. So like when Drake puts out an album, sometimes you don't hear any more music for a year. Yeah. Like he's taking that time to like, he's put so much into something, he needs to recharge. A lot of times actors will like do a movie, and so they'll go crazy for like 2 or 3 months on a really intense role, and then they take 6 months off. They take a year off to like recharge. And so even though I don't want to take breaks as large as that in my life, being okay that like when you're a creative and you're an artist and you're pouring everything into your art and what you're making, that takes a toll on you, like mentally and physically, and you have to allow time to recharge from those things. But yeah, I mean, there's no question, like pressure is real, and you're going to feel that forever, especially just because we're in this era that you got to be always on. Right. Like if you're not putting out something every day, that like you're doing something wrong, and it's like, okay, like you're going to be fine. because in a lot of ways, no one actually cares about you that much. Like they're not gonna miss your like Instagram stories if you gotta take a week off. Like it's gonna be okay.
They may not even notice that you took a week off until you post again. They're like,
exactly.
Such and such.
But
it's funny that you say that, because the past few weeks we have been talking about social media and kind of that pressure to post on a regular basis. I know that's conversations that you and I have had, even, outside of the podcast. And then also the need for it to perform well, and trying to post at times where everybody sees it. So it's just funny that you kind of bring that up, because I think it applies to that as well. And just learning to like take a break from it and rest. And again, like nobody is really thinking about you, that much, as much as you may think.
And anyone who is thinking about you that much is doing less than you are, because they shouldn't be having time to acknowledge.
Talk to the people. Bars. Talk to the people. Bars. That's the highlight clip. Hey, wow. I want to ask you this. What do you think is one of your biggest fears as a creative?
It's a good question. I think lack of progression in getting better, because I think that I'm working on like a video project right now called The Art of Getting Better, because I think that as, let's say you're a photographer or a filmmaker and you're just making the same thing over and over again, right? You're making these videos, it's easy to forget to be developing new skills. And so I think the biggest fear for me is for my work to look the same that it does now as it will in 2 years. Like if my work in 2 years isn't substantially better in some way, even if it's small things, like I'm getting better at color correction, or I'm getting better at motion design, or like whatever it may be, like that's the thing that scares me, is that I'm not keeping a close enough eye on my like technical abilities and creative abilities to become like a much better creative. Because like in the same way that like, sure, I'm only 27 and that's cool, but the 18-year-old version of myself is like somewhere in the world, and he's like working as hard as he can right now because he wants to beat me at this point. And so like keeping an eye on like making sure that I'm not getting stuck in my ways or anything like that, and always pushing forward is something that I try to be really conscious of, and it's a big fear of mine that I'm not doing it well enough.
Wow. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good, man.
I understand that. And honestly, I'm still stuck on the last thing that you said. Yeah. That was great. Okay. So
I just think it's funny because I got this, so like I said, I just put out that video a couple weeks ago, Back to the Mission, and I got this one comment that was just absolutely ridiculous. And some, like, I don't know, I think the like troll comments are funny because they're just so wrong and like so backwards.
You get trolls,
and someone
Tyler?
Comments, yeah. Oh yeah. Like I got one comment on that video that was like, all you make is sad boy content and you don't make enough content. So like, you're just going to be a cashier one day. And I was like, all right, first off, that's just laughable. But the fact that you had to think about it that much, because I haven't uploaded a video soon enough for you, like there's no way you're winning at life, because like if you were, you wouldn't be concerned with what my videos look like or sound like, And so like, that's like the just staying laser focused on you is the thing that will always keep you moving forward.
Do you ever comment to the trolls?
No, I really try not to acknowledge it, and I have no fear. Like I try to allow as little negativity in my life as possible. So if someone like drops a bad comment or a bad message, like it's immediately just a block and like get out of my life, because that's just going to distract me in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, I think there's nothing. I've definitely had phases where I've been like very petty about it and will like respond back or something. And there's just no good comes from that at all.
Thanks.
And I always think about like my like creative idols and things. Like if the person who I look up to, if they don't care about what people are saying, like why should I? Right. Like if I'm trying to put myself in that same category, it does no good for me to lash back out. And it's like, it's funny, I'm going to bring up Drake again, but like the song Emotionless, he talks a lot about like social media and like what's behind the keyboards. And it really is like, there's no one doing better than you is ever going to critique you in that way. So remembering that like you just have to stay on your wave, and like there's going to be a lot of distractions around you, but they don't really matter. It's important.
Yeah, we're just gonna pass the offering plate around now.
I mean, I respect it, but also Tyler, feel free to put some people in their place. I'm here for it.
It drives engagement.
Make her a moderator. She'll handle them in the comments.
Yeah. Let me do it. I'll say what you can't say. I'd love to.
It's like my anger translator.
Yeah. Okay, so last question of, Creative Confessions. What would be the biggest piece of advice that you would give to other creatives?
So it's weird. I've been doing this thing recently. We'll talk about social media again, where I have 2 phones that I keep on me all the time. This is like my life phone. This phone has a SIM card. It has my text, my email. This phone has no social media on it whatsoever. And then this phone, which is my like broken iPhone for forever ago, has Instagram and Twitter and TikTok and all those things. This phone stays off like 90% of the time unless I need to get on to post something of value. And separating that in my mind and like being okay with not just constantly picking up my phone and comparing myself to every other photographer or videographer on the internet, has done so much for myself creatively, like feeling healthier, feeling like I've got better ideas flowing. I feel like my work is looking the most like what I imagine it should, like in my mind. And, the comparison thing of like, I'm not seeing what everyone else is doing 24/7. So I can just focus on the task at hand, which is like, my mind is only on this podcast right now. It's not about like what I saw 5 minutes before or what I'm going to do 5 minutes after. It just lets me stay really, really locked into the moment. And I think that in this world that has so many distractions, like 24/7, the less distractions you can have in your life, the better creative life you're going to have.
Wow. Well, I'm going to start looking up another phone that I can buy.
Jailbroken phone.
Right.
And this is why I get anxiety when I see your videos pop up, because I'm like, I know I need to get to a place where I can just like focus and listen to what you're saying, because I'm doing myself a disservice if I have any distractions around me. That's amazing, man.
So much wisdom.
So much.
So young.
From an almost 30-year-old.
That's awesome, man.
So good, man. There's a lot in there.
I mean, I'm going to have to, I said this with Nick a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to have to go back and like really like dissect everything that you're saying, because you're really dropping some gems.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Well, y'all I know you've been.
Yeah, I just want to
have a lot of questions. So
we could keep those offline. I'm trying to keep the fanboy down a little bit. But yeah, man, I want to say that I recently switched over to Canon. And all the people,
can we all just
welcome.
And all the people who influenced that decision are in this room, because I asked these guys, I've been going like back and forth for weeks. Well, Joe, why? Just tell me why is it better? And I was just looking at like just the A7S III, the R5, and then you posted, your thoughts on the R5, and I got to the end where it says, hey, if you're not doing such and such, you don't need this camera. And I was like, thank you. Someone, I don't have to go and spend all this money. And I just ended up getting the R6. So I just want to say thank you for that influence as well. And thank you guys for, bringing me over to Canon.
Yeah, man. I mean, welcome.
So I'm actually switching to Sony next week.
Wow.
All right, podcast done.
I was gonna be broken. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. I was gonna be broken.
No. I'm pretty much ride or die Canon 24/7. The only thing I did recently just pick up the X100V, because I basically got to a point where I no longer want to leave my house without a camera. I want to have a camera on me 24/7, because I don't want to only shoot photos for clients and for Instagram anymore. I want to like document my actual life. Yeah. The idea that over the last 10 years, like all I have are like bangers from Instagram, and I don't have like photos of me and my friends hanging out, like really bugged me. Ones. So so I picked this up recently, but other than that, I don't see myself switching from Canon anytime in the near future.
I'm so happy to hear you say that.
That's good.
In a world of so many Sony shooters, I'm happy to have someone who's ride or die Canon. I love that. You hear that, Mark?
Yes. Quick question. If you had one lens to keep out of all your lenses, which one?
The lens I use the most is the 16 to 35. It's kind of like a great like photo and for vlogging and all that stuff. But the Sigma 35 millimeter 1.4 art edition is, I think, my favorite lens I've ever used. So like if you told me like desert island camera, like it's going to be the Sigma.
Literally my most used lens is that 35.
Yeah. So good.
Cool. All right, man. Well, I'm happy that you came on today.
Yeah.
Like, thank you for,
absolutely.
answering.
This was a really, really great conversation, and hope it helps people. Just all I care about,
Yeah.
It's helped me. So if that's all it's accomplished.
You already got the W.
Right.
You helped 3 people right now.
We're all evaluating our lives.
Yeah, man. Well, for people who, again, don't follow you or anything, just tell people how to get connected with you on all the socials that you keep on the red iPhone.
So, you can pretty much just search Tyler Babin anywhere. I go by Babin the most on the internet, which is Babin. YouTube is where the most of my energy goes. And other than that, I kind of float between everything. So if you message me, I should see it. And if I don't see it, just keep messaging me and I'll see it at some point.
Yeah.
That's what's up.
Cool.
All right,
super nice guy too. He's not faking it for the interview. Really nice guy.
When you responded to my message on Instagram, I was like, you know what? I like this guy. He's approachable.
I like the cut of his jib.
Okay. All right.
We don't let Joe out much.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. This was really, really great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Joe, you want to take us out?
All right. Well, again, thank you guys for joining us again for the Creators Are Essential podcast. Thank you again to our guest, Tyler Babin.
Living legend.
Yes, sir. Make sure you follow us on all of our socials, Instagram at Creators Are Essential, and subscribe while you're here on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube.
And get some merch too.
That's right. creatorsareessential.co. Holla at your boy. And yeah, man, y'all be good, be great, keep creating, and we'll see you in the next one.
Peace.
Peace.
Peace.